Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the KMN 1971 back with another edition of my comic book collection spotlight series. This edition is going to be very story driven. There will be pretty much no keys at all in this video, so if that's your thing, this video probably won't be for you. However, if you are one of those comic book collectors that actually likes to read comics, this video should be right in your wheelhouse, because this is going to be representing my top 10 Justice League stories since I've been collecting. I've been a Justice League fan dating back to probably the mid-'80s when I first jumped onto the Giffen, DeMatteis, Maguire Justice League run, and even before that, when I used to watch the Super Friends as a little kid, or getting that occasional Justice League of America comic off the spinner rack when my parents would come home from the store, and I would just read anything, or look at anything at least. So, there's been a lot of negative press over the past several weeks in regards to Justice League, some of it justified, some of it, in my opinion, totally not justified. So, but that's not about that. This is about just positive stuff, man. And this is, what I'll try to do is showcase my top 10 Justice League stories without giving away too many spoilers. So if you haven't read any of these stories yet, and you want to seek them out, you can still enjoy them like I did. Alright? So without any further ado, let's get it on. Starting it off at number 10, JLA Heaven's Ladder. If you can see the title there, it's a big treasury-sized graphic novel that was done by Mark Waid and Brian Hitch. And just a really original storyline. Beautifully rendered by Brian Hitch in his big cinematic style, widescreen cinematic style that we've all come to expect from him. And just a very intellectually written story by Mark Waid. Yes, this is basically another, the Justice League has to save the Earth from another alien threat. But this is not the exact, it's not what you would call a punch the alien in the face affair. This is more of a philosophical affair. It questions our existence, and just very good. So I would definitely recommend it. At number 9, another Mark Waid classic, JLA number 43, The Tower of Babel, part 1 of 4. And this story essentially is Ra's al Ghul steals Batman's plans on how he would defeat every single Justice Leaguer and uses them against the Justice League. Eventually, they band together and overcome and defeat Ra's al Ghul, but not without there being seeds of distrust sown within the Justice League, and they end up eventually voting Batman out of the team for a short period of time, because they probably knew sales would go down without Batman, right? So here's part 2, number 44, part 3, number 45, and part 4, number 46. Coming in at number 8, Justice League, A New World Order, which kicked off with JLA number 1 by Grant Morrison and Howard Porter. Howard Porter, I guess he ended up getting into a car accident. He's never been able to draw the same since then. But his work on the early JLA, I mean, it might look a little dated now, but it was a breath of fresh air back then, man. Really good stuff. So, New World Order, essentially another alien threat, threatening Earth, obviously. The JLA band together. They come together for the first time in this incarnation and overcome the threat. I don't want to say what aliens they are, because it is a very cool plot twist, and if you haven't read the story, it's something that I hadn't seen before. In kind of like a Silver Age fashion, too, Grant Morrison ends up getting the people of Earth to help the Justice League in order to stop this alien threat, which I thought was pretty neat also. Grant Morrison, this is the title that actually made him that respected, well, before JLA, he was like that respected Vertigo writer he ended up getting a lot of critical praise, but his books didn't really sell all that much. Justice League, JLA rather, put him into superstar status, and rightfully so. One of the best runs in modern comic books, bar none. So JLA number 1. Number 2, 3, and 4. Coming in at number 8, you cannot have a top Justice League stories without a good old-fashioned JLA JSA crossover. This is another hardcover graphic novel that was done by David S. Goyer, who you might remember from his work on JSA back in the day, as well as this little trilogy called, the Batman Begins, and the Dark Knight, as well as Dark Knight Rises, I guess. Can't really remember the names. It's early in the morning. But, you know, the original, well, the Nolan Batman trilogy. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, JLA, JSA, they team up to go up against Johnny Sorrow as well as Despero. Several of the Leaguers are possessed by the 7 deadly sins. And, of course, they end up coming together in the end and overcoming all of it. Beautifully illustrated by Carlos Pacheco. And that's what you're going to see a lot of. Well, it would make sense that some of my favorite stories are done by some of the best creators in the industry. All right, another JLA classic, and probably my favorite Grant Morrison arc from his run on Justice League, Rock of Ages. Great stuff. Basically, the Justice League versus the Injustice Gang, headed by Luthor and Joker, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens. The JLA try to find this, basically this, almost like kind of like an infinity cube, but it's not. It's just one of those artifacts of mass power, and they end up, the story ends up shifting into an alternate dimension where they end up facing off against Darkseid, and the last 2 people standing are Connor Hawke, the second Green Arrow, and the Atom to take down Darkseid, and it is incredible. So, highly recommend this story arc to anyone. JLA number 10, number 11, number 12, 13, 14, and I want to say a lot of some of the concepts that Grant Morrison came up with in this story arc, he ended up recycling them and using them again, or rather probably refining them and using them again in Final Crisis. And the conclusion, number 15. So, beautiful stuff, drawn by Howard Porter, Gary Frank, and written by Grant Morrison. How can you go wrong? Alright, so what's that? 1, 2... Move it along. JLA Avengers by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. Fandom had waited almost 20 years for this book to finally come out, and it was worth the wait, I have to say. I mean, this is just a good old-fashioned, as Kurt Busiek put it, a fun geek fest, and that's all it is. This isn't Watchmen at all. This is just 2 super teams slugging it out. Both of the realities become merged at one point, and it culminates with basically a huge slugfest at the end that involves pretty much every single member of the Avengers and the Justice League. Very cool stuff. Very fun. So, JLA Avengers number 1. Number 2, which actually features the JLA and Avengers fighting against each other, which includes the main events of Batman versus Captain America and, of course, Thor versus Superman. JLA Avengers number 3. Let me try to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. And I don't put a backing board in this one ever just because look at that George Perez wraparound cover. I know I've shown this around before in one of my favorite cover tag videos, but that is just beautiful. And finally, JLA Avengers number 4, where you have Superman holding Mjolnir and Captain America's shield. That's pretty epic. Alright, so how many do I have left here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. So coming at number 4, the Darkseid War. I had to include something from the Jeff Johns era on Justice League from the New 52. I was tempted to put in the first story arc that featured Darkseid and Jim Lee artwork, but I just thought that this was a much better story. The first one was just basically the New 52 origin of the Justice League, which was a pretty simplistic story, to be honest. But this was just comic book epicness. So it involves Darkseid, it involves the Anti-Monitor, it has guest stars like Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. It has so much stuff going on. Grail, and there's been reverberations from this comic, well, from this story arc that are still going. These plot lines are still going through the DC universe as we speak. So, number 41, 42, and most of this arc is just beautifully rendered by Jason Fabok, I believe his name is. And there's a couple of fill-in issues by Francis Manapul, but you can't go wrong with this story arc. Number 43, 44, featuring Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor throwing down. How cool is that? Number 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. Great stuff. The Justice League and Batman were probably the only two titles from the New 52 that I saw that I stuck with basically all the way through from start to finish. So great stuff. A great era on the Justice League. All right, the last Grant Morrison classic that will be on this list. JLA Earth 2, hardcover graphic novel by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Great stuff. Don't want to give away too much, but this made the crime syndicate cool. I always thought they were a little hokey, but this is the version of the crime syndicate that has been incorporated in the mainstream DC universe now, and it all started with this. This is the same crime syndicate that you've seen in Forever Evil, and to no one's surprise, beautifully rendered by Frank Quitely. Basically, the Justice League goes over to, I guess, Earth 2, where everyone is just a douche, and the crime syndicate comes here and they do a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. But highly recommended, and probably my favorite Grant Morrison Justice League story, which, if anyone that's read Grant Morrison's Justice League run, you know that's saying a lot. Sorry to be vague on it, but I don't want to give anything up on about that story. Alright, my humble beginnings. This is where I officially became a Justice League fan. This is Justice League number 1, first part of Justice League A New Beginning. Up until this point, Justice League had been called Justice League America, and was a very, subpar title, let's just say. They ended up getting, shortly after Crisis on Infinite Earths, that series wrapped up, DC revamped a lot of their books. Wonder Woman, The Flash, Superman, just to name a few, and, of course, Justice League was canceled also, and replaced with this more humorous version done by Kevin Maguire. Drawn by Kevin Maguire and written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. And this is definitely one of my top 10 favorite runs of all time. Not just Justice League, but of all time. This ended up breathing a lot of fresh air into the franchise and introduced me to a bunch of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth string characters that Giffen and DeMatteis made me care about. I mean, front and center, Guy Gardner, right there. Who cared about Guy Gardner before Justice League, right? So, great stuff. Very funny, and I think I think it withstood the test of time pretty well. So here's number one. If you're gonna grab anything, like this book used to be hot back in the day, and I think you can find it in dollar bins or maybe regular long boxes as of right now. But it does sport this iconic cover. But I would recommend, if you want something semi-collectible, to go after the Justice League #1 Millennium Edition. That is the foil variant. That's the only one that I can see that's kind of worth money. So Justice League #1, but this will always be in my collection. Justice League #2, #3, which I think might have had that Superman logo variant, which I'm still on the hunt for, actually, if I can find it on the cheap. #4, #5, which if you've ever wondered what issue features that famous one punch where Batman knocks Guy Gardner out with one punch, that would be in this issue. And yes, it was hysterical. Issue #6, where a possessed Shazam takes on Martian Manhunter. Very cool slugfest that I had never seen before up until that point, and I don't think I've seen since. And lastly, #7, where they changed the title to Justice League International, and Captain Atom in Rocket Red from Russia ends up joining the team. And like I said, just a golden age on the Justice League franchise. Alright, finally, my #1 Justice League story of all time goes to Justice. This was incredible. Alex Ross, Jim Kruger, Doug Braithwaite? I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. But this is why they make comics. This is why I collect comics. This is basically, well, it's an out-of-continuity story, but it's almost like they went up to Alex Ross and said, just tell your ultimate Justice League story. If it, this story almost plays out like a major crossover without all the baggage of one. It's one of those world-ending events. All the major Justice Leaguers have their time in the spotlight to shine at one point during the story arc. It features yet again another battle against the Injustice Gang or Legion of Doom, whichever you want to say, just the classic villains, and just beautifully rendered by Alex Ross. I want to say that Doug Braithwaite probably, if I'm remembering correctly, did the like basically the pencils or breakdowns, and Alex Ross just painted over it, but the end result is just beautiful. Everything that you could want in this comic. You want guest stars. That contains the Metal Men. It contains the Titans, Supergirl, the Captain Marvel family. Just incredible. The moments it has Superman basically bitch slap Batman, knock him into next week. You had a Superman Shazam fight. You had Green Lantern versus Sinestro. You had Aquaman versus Ocean Master, Wonder Woman versus Cheetah. Just about every kind of like big moment that you'd want in a big time story like this occurs. So highest possible recommendation. If you like great story, if you like great characters, if you like beautiful artwork, you can't go wrong with this. So Justice #1. Oops. Justice #2. And I want to say that there's also second prints. Well, I know that there are second prints to this. I want to say issue #2, which features a second print of Batman, which I have stored somewhere in my collection, as well as I think issue #4, the one that features an Alex Ross Captain Marvel variant for the second print. All the ones to go after those. But all of these are very affordable. #3. #4. Look at those covers. #5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11, and 12. And as I said, yeah, basically the ultimate Justice League story. All the major villains, all the major heroes, guest stars galore, and beautiful story and artwork to go along with it. Like I said, highest possible recommendation. So I hope you all like this video. This was my first try at doing like a top 10 favorite story list of any kind of comic book franchise. Something I'd try to like implement more going along and down in the future. So hope you all liked it. I tried to put it in a way that tell you a little bit about the story without spoiling the story. Try to give you incentive to maybe try to check it out. So if you enjoy the Justice League and you want to throw some positive Justice League videos out there, I think that would be really cool too. I'd love to see what other people's favorite Justice League stories are. I'm not going to make a tag of this or anything like that, but if you feel like throwing one out there, do it. So that's all for this week. I will be back next week with a very large comic book haul, my last haul of the year. I'm not sure if I'll break it into 2 videos or not. I think I might have to, but we'll see. So thank you all for watching, liking, subscribing as usual, and enjoy your weekend. Take care out there. See ya.